Let me introduce myself. I am Han Jue, a typical unlucky young man of the 21st century who received a death notice due to terminal cancer at just 21 years old. Disgusted with the painful treatments, I decided to go home, grind waifus, and calmly await death's knocking at my door. To kill time, I downloaded some silly cultivation game to play. Who would have thought that I would log out of Earth right there on my keyboard? Yet when I opened my eyes again, I found myself in a prestigious cultivation sect called Noctan Tong, officially starting a new life. Having just transmigrated, Han Jue was welcomed with an embarrassingly poor attribute sheet, with a low-grade spiritual root. No matter how hard he cultivated, even until Congo's New Year, it was doubtful he'd succeed. Luckily, life doesn't block anyone's path completely. The system allowed him to re-roll his attributes, and so, with all his faith, the young man nervously pressed the button to roll his dice of fate. And the result was truly surprising, so surprising he nearly fell back. His spiritual root disappeared, but his luck was gifted with the heavenly killing single star, aka a lifetime of being single. At his wit's end, Han Jue exploded in rage, yelling at the system that no one wanted a life of loneliness forever. But it seemed screaming didn't solve anything. Subsequent dice rolls only brought more darkness to his future. Finally, after 11 long years of rewinding luck, the young Han Jue, who once was full of promise, now looks like an old uncle, desperately begging the system grandpa to grant him a decent stat. In this new life, Han Jue's situation wasn't much better since his parents were slaves to an elder and forbidden from cultivating. Then disaster struck at age 6 when his parents, seeking a brighter future, fled and left him alone to inherit the garden work, and before he knew it, he was 11 years old. However, Han Jue had a secret. The system allowed him to rewind his stats once a day, and he had persisted with this lottery for nearly 10 years with the strong belief that one day he would hit the jackpot. Many days after that, his life continued quietly like these thatched huts by the riverside. Every morning, he began with the classic exercise routine, 1 2 3 4, to train his body. After stretching his muscles and bones thoroughly, it was time for the main event of the day. With a hopeful expression, he opened the system and told himself, "All right, let's see how good my luck is today." Without any hesitation, his finger pressed straight on the rewind button, placing all his hopes on this click. And the system replied with a phrase more brutal than any: "Spiritual root, a one-of-a-kind piece of trash." This result struck Han Jue like a thunderous blow, making him spit blood from anger. It seemed his luck had hit rock bottom again today. After a streak of bad luck, Han Jue cried without shedding a tear and decided to change things up by returning to the pre-heaven chi luck stage to see what would happen. Then a miracle occurred. The system reported a massive jackpot with 4 top pre-heaven chi luck ranks: Peerless, Supreme Sword Technique, Supreme Agility, and Descendant of the Immortal Emperor. Before the screen shining with golden light, Han Jue stood frozen for 5 seconds, unable to believe his eyes. All 4 were top server level. This shock was so overwhelming that his brain temporarily shut down. Immediately after, a shout of joy echoed everywhere, marking the end of his beaten-down days. The overwhelming happiness shocked him to the point of fainting in bliss. Lying on the grass, Han Jue smiled with satisfaction. The feeling of being a rich kid after years of living like a peasant was truly wonderful. After enjoying enough, he calmed down and identified his next goal: just focus on returning to the spiritual root stage and that would be it. With these 4 peak luck ranks as capital, he confidently declared that even if he had to keep returning until he was 40, it would be no problem. Standing high and looking down, he grew even more determined. Having been reborn once, he was determined to live a truly fulfilling life, not a dull slave existence. After gaining such an enormous starting capital, Han Jue confidently boasted to the whole world that one day his name would be recorded in history. But before he could boast for long, an announcement came that 2 immortals had arrived from the inner sect, requiring everyone to line up to welcome them. This made Han Jue can't help but wonder what these big bosses were suddenly doing when they came down to this peasant area. Shortly after, 2 imposing immortals appeared, one male and one female, radiating a powerful aura. The crowd of slave onlookers immediately widened their eyes and opened their mouths in admiration, marveling at the demeanor of these cultivation practitioners. Meanwhile, our main character was silently boasting to himself, there's nothing to be jealous of. Wait until I return with a genuine spiritual root, then I'll be stronger than them." The cold male cultivator declared that today they would stay here to cultivate and guard the medicinal garden, forbidding anyone from disturbing them. Hearing this, Han Jue suddenly became alarmed and anxiously inquired about the whereabouts of Elder Thiet. The beautiful female cultivator explained that because demon cultivators had appeared, Elder Thiet had to go on a mission, and they were sent here to protect the area. Han Jue breathed a sigh of relief. At least before he could return with a genuine spiritual root, he still needed Elder Thiet's umbrella to protect him. Han Jue knew clearly that the cultivation world was ruthless, so he hoped he would be lucky enough to return with a top-tier spiritual root as soon as possible to have something for self-defense. The next day, he began his quest for luck by summoning the God of Wealth to grant him an SSR, but the result was still a pile of junk. The following day, he switched to Western spiritualism with the chant Hallelujah, but fortune still didn't smile upon him. A long year passed, during which Han Jue prayed to all the gods he knew, begging for a bit of luck. 2 years later, the scenery remained the same, only the heavy silence revealed the young man's futile perseverance. He was extremely frustrated. For 2 whole years he hadn't obtained a high-grade spiritual root, let alone a masterpiece, and he didn't know how long he would have to wait before he could cultivate. In a moment of weakness, he considered accepting a medium-grade spiritual root, but then quickly dismissed the idea, because having been reborn, he intended to live the best and longest life possible. At that moment, an announcement came over the loudspeaker that Elder Iron Chief had returned after 2 years of absence. All the slaves gathered to welcome back their lord. To everyone's surprise, Elder Iron Chief personally came to thank Han Jue for taking good care of the place during his absence. In front of Elder Iron Chief, the slaves vied to flatter him, believing that serving him was their honor. Only Han Jue remained clear-headed, silently thinking that these people were true bootlickers. No matter how much they flattered, Elder Iron Chief would not grant them any benefits. While he was lost in thought, someone came over and called his name along with 3 others, saying the Lord wanted to see them. Under the moonlight, all 4 stood bewildered but stammered assent to the order. The others began whispering rumors, wondering why the Lord suddenly summoned these 4 specifically. Then Elder Iron Chief made a shocking request. He wanted to check their spiritual root grades. Han Jue felt alarmed inside. Wasn't Elder Iron Chief the one who forbade slaves from cultivating? Why was he now doing a complete turnaround like this? He broke out in a cold sweat, feeling that something was wrong and was about to speak up. At that moment, he noticed the blood stain on the old Chief Iron's clothes, a sign that he might have been injured. Facing the old Chief Iron who was radiating a murderous aura, Han Jue, though frightened, obediently reached out his hand. When the old Chief Iron grabbed his hand, Han Jue guessed his scheme. Surely he intended to use them to refine elixirs for healing. Fortunately, he did not discover Han Jue's spiritual root. Next was Truong Cap, who was also discovered to have a spiritual root, which made Han Jue sigh in relief because he himself had not started cultivation yet, otherwise, it would have been disastrous. The old Chief Iron then made an enticing offer, wanting to accept Truong Cap as his disciple and take him outside for training. Faced with a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity to change his life, Truong Cap agreed immediately without hesitation. The others could only watch with envy, believing Truong Cap would now take a giant step towards becoming an immortal. But Han Jue thought differently. He believed that the severely injured old Chief Iron had only one path to death outside, and following him was tantamount to suicide, further strengthening his determination to cultivate safely. And so, another 3 years quietly passed while Han Jue waited. Finally, on a beautiful day, the mad laughter of the young man broke the silence, signaling a quality-of-life explosion. He had regained the spiritual root he dreamed of, the 6-path spiritual body, a supreme spiritual root with 6 of the highest-ranked attributes. Now, with both his innate chi and spiritual root being VIP grade, Han Jue enthusiastically declared, "Everything is ready, what are we waiting for? Let's begin cultivating." Just as he was brimming with enthusiasm, Han Jue suddenly paused, remembering that he was still being monitored by the minions of the Iron Elder. If it became known that he was cultivating, he might really become a spiritual pill. Fortunately, the system grandfather intervened just in time, providing a function to create a secluded world that would hide him from prying eyes. With this impressive feature, Han Jue felt completely at ease. Truly, this system had never failed him. All concerns resolved, the heroic soul proclaimed, "Today, I, Han Jue, will officially embark on the path of cultivation." Without hesitation, he immediately commanded the system to start the process. The system then presented choices for the main cultivation path. including directions such as sword cultivation, thunder cultivation, earth cultivation, fire cultivation, and so on. After some consideration, he realized that his 6 paths reincarnation technique allowed him to cultivate all 6 elements, so choosing sword cultivation was the most reasonable to avoid wasting his potential. He thought carefully, knowing this was an important decision that would affect his entire future. In the end, as expected, he chose to become a sword cultivator. Immediately, the cultivation process began, a warm energy flowing through his body for the first time, giving him a feeling of being full of strength. After starting, the system displayed the entire set of attributes for Han Jue's Super VIP Pro status, a well-deserved achievement for 11 years of perseverance. While absorbed in admiring it, he suddenly discovered a brand new tab on the interface named Relationships. Curious, he clicked on it and was stunned to see information about the Elder Thiet. The favorability level was hate, and he would strike to harm if he knew Han Jue had cultivation potential. This shock made Han Jue furious. He cursed the old bastard silently for his ingratitude after so many years of caring for the medicinal herb garden. But then he calmed down, reasoning that the elder hated him because his parents had fled, and since the elder had disappeared for several years, he was temporarily safe. Not wanting to waste more time on trivial matters, he decided to begin cultivating immediately. He started forming the seal, preparing for his first ever absorption of spiritual energy. Sitting in a meditative posture, he set the goal to leave this place as soon as he reached the 9th level of the Qi refining realm. However, he encountered a problem. Despite having the 6-path spiritual body, he could not sense the fire and thunder spiritual energies. The system then presented 2 initial development paths. One was peerless genius and the other was humble cultivation. The second choice allowed him to conceal his cultivation level, innate roots, and potential, exactly what someone dogged to death, like Han Jue needed. Without much thought, he smirked confidently and naturally chose the option safety first. 2 years later, Han Jue's life still flowed quietly in the familiar herbal garden. He had utilized the 4 types of spiritual energy he could sense to nurture the spiritual herbs, turning the tedious work into something more efficient than ever. And the results were impressive. With just those 4 types of spiritual energy, he had quietly broken through to the 7th level of the Qi refining realm. After he finished his performance, he carefully looked around to make sure no one was watching before ending his work session. On the surface, he was still a diligent slave, sociable and well-liked by everyone. In fact, he had even become the male idol in the hearts of the female slaves. Everyone praised him for being handsome and talented, and they all wanted to marry him. Han Jue could only remain silent. This was a side effect of the peerless aura, a kind of charm that even the system could not conceal. While busy with his work, someone suddenly called his name. The one calling him was the fairy Heng Hong Tuen, one of 2 assigned to guard this place. She requested that he follow her for a moment. With no other choice, Han Jue obediently followed the beauty into a secluded forest. He felt uneasy secretly, because she had never spoken to any slave before. To find out more, he secretly asked the system about his relationship with her, and was surprised to see that the goodwill rating was already at 2 stars. This was strange. He had never interacted with her, so why was the goodwill level so high? He immediately guessed that the trouble was caused by his own charm and began to wildly speculate about her intentions, even feeling a bit excited. At that moment, Heng Hong Tuen spoke up, asking him if he was willing to be a slave here for life. Han Jue feigned loyalty, replying that although no one wanted it, he had been here since childhood and still had the Iron Elder. She then made a proposal: help her with one thing, and she would help him escape his status as a slave and cultivate. That task was to help her obtain the pill refining prescription from the Iron Elder. She even flirted by saying that if his talent was good, she wouldn't mind becoming his companion. Heng Hong Tuen's proposal left Han Jue stunned, with only one thought in his mind: she is a person of the demon sect. He couldn't believe his ears, never expecting that this seemingly upright beauty was actually a demon woman. Han Jue found himself in a dilemma. Agreeing would offend the Jade Green sect, but refusing would surely lead to her silencing him. He realized he was deep in the forest, and shouting was useless because no one nearby could come to his aid. Seeing his hesitation, Heng Hong Tuen patiently said she could wait for him to think it over. Han Jue silently calculated. Although both were at the 7th level of Qi refinement, he had no weapons or magic. While she surely had many tricks, violence was not an option. So, he decided to play dumb, claiming he didn't know where the prescription was and that someone else was guarding it. He even pretended to be a weak mortal without any cultivation to let her guard down. But Hin Hong Twen exposed his lie. She clearly knew about the prescription upstairs and that Elder Thiet would not return for several years. She came up with a final plan. She would lure the remaining guard away, and he just had to sneak in and steal it, a task that seemed not too difficult. To ensure success, Hin Hong Twen gifted Han Jue a pill she claimed would open his spiritual roots, but he knew full well it was definitely poison. Refusing to let him decline, she forcibly shoved the pill into his mouth, forcing him to swallow it. Then, she comforted him like a pet, promising that after the job, she would train him to be her husband. Han Jue had no choice but to switch to actor mode, tears streaming as he thanked her while cursing inwardly. As soon as he returned to his room, the first thing he did was order the system to expel the poisonous pill from his body. With the system's help, he easily vomited out the pill and neutralized the threat. He swore he would never forgive Hin Hong Twen, but for now, he still had to consider whether to follow her instructions. He analyzed that the people of the demonic sect were very ruthless. Even if he helped her, he could still be killed to keep him silent. At that moment, the system appeared again, presenting him with two options: either help her or refuse. He was visibly pleased, not expecting there to be a system mission, and that refusing to help her would also come with a reward. With the tempting reward from the system, Han Jue didn't hesitate and immediately decided, "Hin Hong Twen, you and I are sworn enemies." After making his decision, he simply sat silently and awaited the unfolding drama. While meditating, he suddenly heard a sound. It seemed the main character of the play had arrived. Hin Hong Twen appeared by the window and announced her plan. She would lure the guard away while he sneaked in to search for the item, to which he responded briefly, "Understood." She carefully warned that there was a formation on the upper floor. If triggered, Elder Thiet would return immediately, so he had to act quickly. Although he had his own plan, under the pressure of the beautiful woman, Han Jue couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Night fell. The tower of Elder Thiet stood imposingly, signaling an unrestful night ahead. But instead of luring the guard away, Han Jue discovered that Hin Hong Twen had brutally killed his teammate, truly a ruthless demoness. He could only spare a minute of silence for the unfortunate brother whose name he had yet to know. Immediately after, the entire sect erupted in chaos. Everyone chased after Hin Hong Twen and sent someone to alert Elder Thiet. Seeing that the crowd had all been lured away by Hin Hong Twen, Han Jue realized that the stage now belonged to him. He decided to, reluctantly, play along a bit. After all, it was to fulfill the system's mission. However, Elder Thiet's study was so large that he had to run everywhere searching in a panic. He checked each item carefully, hoping to find something like a prescription. He couldn't help but complain about the absurdity of the task, thinking that the witch's mind must be messed up for making him do this. Even an old man's calligraphy brush was made of gold. He silently cursed this cruel wealthy landlord. While he was busy ranting, Hin Hong Twen suddenly turned around, giving him a terrifying scare. When she questioned him, he hastily denied everything, swearing his loyalty with heaven and earth as witnesses. But she didn't believe him. She radiated killing intent and threatened that she wouldn't hesitate to kill one more person. In a panic, Han Jue grabbed something and quickly raised it, seeming to have found the prescription at the last moment. What Han Jue grabbed in his panic was a vase, and it was falling straight towards the ground. Both he and Hin Hong Twen were stunned by this unexpected situation. The vase shattered, and inside was the alchemy prescription she had been searching for. Truly like a blind cat catching a fried fish, he couldn't believe his luck was this good. Faced with this unbelievable stroke of luck, Han Jue froze, while Hin Hong Twen fainted from shock. It seemed she misunderstood, thinking he had deliberately hidden the prescription in the vase, quietly amazed at his cleverness. But Han Jue was terrified. He thought that once she got what she wanted, she would surely kill him to keep him silent. Contrary to his expectations, Hin Hong Twen regained consciousness and embraced him, calling him her lucky charm. She even praised him as romantic, while he was silently crying inside because he was about to lose the system's reward. However, he quickly noticed that her breathing was unstable. She had probably exhausted herself to lure the enemy away. Recognizing this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Han Jue began pondering how to ambush this demoness. He decided to raise a weapon that looked like an inkstone, preparing to deliver her a decisive blow. At the last moment, Hin Hong Twen sensed the murderous intent and looked up in astonishment. With a successful ambush, Han Tuet defeated her, causing her to drop the prescription. Without hesitation, he immediately grabbed the prescription, completing the system's mission. But then, unexpectedly, the final boss appeared. Chief Thiet suddenly descended, holding the prescription and demanding to know who dared to touch his belongings. Hin Hong Tuen was also shocked, unable to understand why Chief Thiet had returned at this moment. Chief Thiet revealed that he had returned long ago and had been observing the two because he suspected something suspicious. Ignoring Han Tuet, he charged straight at Hin Hong Tuen, shouting, "Demonis, prepare to die." Thus, a fierce battle erupted between the two monks. Hin Hong Tuen realized she had fallen into a trap. Exhausted from luring the enemy, she knew she'd definitely lose if she fought Chief Thiet. Knowing she couldn't get the prescription, she decided to drop everything and run, seeking an escape route. The elder chief watched her go, clicking his tongue in regret because the demon's fleeing skills were incredibly advanced. At that moment, the actor Han Tuet began to play his role, rolling on the floor and crying out in agony. He confided in the elder chief that he nearly died trying to hold back the demonis, but the old man remained suspicious and asked if they were accomplices. Faced with the elder's interrogation, Han Tuet began to recount the story he had fabricated in his mind. The elder chief scolded him for his foolishness but seemed to believe his story, which made Han Tuet secretly glad to have escaped danger. Afterward, the old man sent him back to his room, and he happily slipped away immediately. As soon as he reached a safe place, the system's reward for completing the mission appeared. Because he hadn't helped Hin Hong Tuen, he received the sword skill, Absolute Divine Sword, finally acquiring a life-saving skill. 2 years later, Han Tuet had trained his new skill so well that he could use the Absolute Divine Sword to split firewood. He noted that although it wasn't a particularly advanced sword technique, it was incredibly convenient for chopping wood. He decided this would be the last time he did this, feeling it was time to leave the medicinal herb garden. The reason was that he had cultivated his 4 spiritual roots to Chi refining stage 9 but couldn't find lightning or fire spiritual energy here to break through. At that moment, he heard that the Iron Elder had gone out to find medicine to extend his lifespan, which made his prison break plan even easier. He secretly compared himself to the Iron Elder, who was stuck at the 7th level of Chi refining, and felt proud of the difference in cultivation potential. With his current cultivation level, he was completely confident in his own strength. He realized that both he and the Iron Elder left for the same purpose, to become stronger and extend their lifespans. So, he slung his luggage over his shoulder and said goodbye to the 20 years of youth he had spent in this place. Looking towards the horizon, he knew that a new life was beginning. Leaving the herb garden, Han Tuet had a bold idea. Since the herb garden belonged to the Jade Clear sect, logically, he could also be considered part of the sect. Therefore, he decided to put down roots here to cultivate. As long as he didn't encounter the Iron Elder, no one would discover his identity. But life was not a dream. He was immediately stopped by 2 gatekeeper disciples who demanded to see his pass. Han Tuet immediately switched to acting mode, and introduced himself as a wanderer named Han Tuet, with cultivation at the 9th level of Chi refining, seeking to join the sect. Upon hearing this, the 2 gatekeepers gaped in astonishment and hurriedly told him to wait while they notified their superiors. Soon after, an official appeared, verified the information, and seemed very interested in him. This official was named Duong Lak. He explained that recently evil cultivators had infiltrated, so they needed to assess Han Tuet's abilities. At Duong Lak's request, Han Tuet confidently agreed. This was his chance to show off. He gathered his internal energy, preparing to unleash the Absolute Finger Divine Sword technique he had been practicing for so long. A powerful sword energy shot out from his finger, shattering an entire mountain wall, proving that a level 9 Chi refining cultivator's strength was no joke. Han Tuet's demonstration shocked everyone present. No one could believe that a level 9 Chi refining cultivator could be this powerful. Duong Lak analyzed silently and realized this was a kind of magic, not swordsmanship, and his spiritual energy was very pure, unlike demonic techniques. After confirming this, he happily announced that Han Tuet had officially become an outer disciple of the Jade Azure sect. Han Tuet politely thanked him, finally achieving his goal of infiltrating the sect in a legitimate way. On the way there, he began mining information, asking about the number of outer disciples and the conditions for entering the inner sect. Duong Lak explained that one must reach the Bamboo Foundation stage to enter the inner sect, and every 3 years there is a competition to vie for the bamboo foundation pill. When asked about the inner sect, Duong Lak said he was unclear because the inner sect existed within a separate miniature world. This caused Han Tuet to silently marvel at how powerful and mysterious the Jade Azure sect really was. Finally, he asked the main question, whether the sect had any place to cultivate fire and thunder spiritual energy. This question startled Duong Lak. He thought there was no external sect, and began to suspect whether Han Tuet actually possessed the rare thunder spirit root. Duong Lak said that if Han Tuet truly had the thunder spirit root, he could recommend him to the Elder Hall for a special exception to enter the internal sect directly. Hearing there was a backdoor way in, Han Tuet immediately seized the opportunity, channeling some thunder spirit power and asking Duong Lak if he could endorse him. He also promised that if he could enter the internal sect, he would never forget Brother Duong's kindness. This performance shocked Duong Lak to the point of wide-eyed astonishment. He never expected to come across such a rare genius. He immediately agreed to break the rules to help and led him to the Elder Hall to make the case. And so, the two proceeded together to the Elder Hall, where the fate of disciples is decided. Duong Lak presented Han Tuet's case to one of the elders. Another elder agreed to handle the procedure and said that it would begin with testing the spiritual roots. Han Tuet began to feel uneasy because he could not discern the cultivation level of this elder, suspecting he was at the Zhu-Ji stage. He panicked, realizing this test might reveal all 6 of his attributes, so he hastily ordered the system to conceal some, deciding to only show off a little to keep a low profile. At the start of the test, Duong Lak requested Han Tuet to demonstrate some of his thunder spirit power. Han Tuet then acted deeply, exhibiting 3 types of spiritual roots: wind, fire, and thunder, astonishing everyone present to the utmost degree. With this rare talent, Duong Lak immediately requested the elder in charge to arrange for him to enter the inner sect directly. After completing the procedures, Han Tuet received the new recruit gift package, including a Taoist robe, a token card, a storage pouch, elixirs, and 100 lower-grade spiritual stones. Everyone accompanied him to his resting chamber, saying that he only needed to wait for the Grand Elder's return to officially enter the inner sect. The moment he stepped into the room, he could feel the dense spiritual energy and was somewhat uncomfortable due to this unintended favor. But then he happily discovered that this place contained fire spiritual energy, perfect for him to cultivate the remaining spiritual root. Cultivation is a very interesting endeavor, but for someone with 6 attributes like Han Tuet, it requires an effort many times greater than usual. Fortunately, his top-tier spiritual root quality compensated for this deficiency, allowing him to cultivate without feeling fatigued. After all, from the beginning, his only goal was simple: to live a truly long life. He recalled that in his previous life he did not cherish his health, which led to an early death, and he knew there would be no third chance. Therefore, in this life, he sought neither fame nor beauty, but had a single objective: immortality. Half a year later, Duong Lak came knocking, apologizing for the wait and informing him that the Grand Elder had returned. But upon seeing Han Tuet, Duong Lak was deeply shocked by his transformation. He noticed that Han Tuet's aura had grown significantly stronger and asked if he had been in seclusion cultivating for the entire past 6 months. Han Tuet opened his eyes, surprised to realize that half a year had passed and that he had successfully cultivated his fire spirit root to the Qi refining stage 9.